Howdy folks! I worked through this entire book, every page and every exercise, so I think I'm qualified to do a book review on it. The book is called Can Paint Watercolors, a step-by-step guide for absolute beginners by Alwyn Crawshaw. The title is an excellent title because it's very descriptive. It is definitely step-by-step because when there's something that requires more than one step, he gives a little diagram on each part and a sentence or two to describe what he did or what to do. And it's also for absolute beginners. He kind of narrows it down to very simple subjects, at least to start with, and kind of puts those together to come up with something a little bit more in-depth. But absolute beginners is good. Also a general beginner who might have dabbled in watercolor but never really got anywhere. If you have some experience, you might find this book to be kind of boring. There might be a few things that you might pick up or want to try painting as you go through it. I don't know, but definitely for the beginner, and he does a good job at that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the book itself. Just to give you a little background on the author, Mr. Crawshaw is from the UK, and he did a number of how-to television shows, and he also has written a number of books, and has also, I think, sold some art supplies too. So that's his background. I also have some information on the original owner of this book that I'll include at the end of the video, which might be interesting. I'm going to try to flip through this pretty quick, so bear with me. Basically, there's an introduction and how to use the book, and that's basically just cheerleading about getting you all psyched up and ready to paint. He has a very small, basic, simple section on basic materials, which is really nice. He doesn't say you have to have, real expensive stuff or things that you can only get from the other end of the globe. He says he uses artist-grade colors, but he said for these exercises you can just go ahead and use student grade and they'll be just fine. And same thing with the brushes. He says the sable brushes are the best, but there are some decent synthetic brushes out there that'll cost you a whole lot less money. As far as paper, he just talks about the different grades of paper. I use this stuff. I don't know if it's a watercolor or not. It's definitely sized and will handle some light watercolor. Maybe it's more of a multimedia. It's kind of a laid type of paper. And I had a bunch of it that I cut into this 8.5 by 5.5 and cut holes to use for journaling. But I figured this would be a good way to use it up, since it is kind of watercolor compatible, even though it's not the best. So that's what I used. From there, he goes on to some just general techniques, like how to do washes, wet-on-wet techniques, some basic shapes and shading. And one of the strengths of the book is colors. Now he talks about here color mixing, and this is the palette that he uses. He tells you exactly what colors, like French ultramarine and whatnot. But actually, I used a very inexpensive 16-color praying set, and that seemed to work really well. In fact, I went through a yellow pan going through the book. But this did just fine, and you might even be able to get away with the 8-color. It might be a little bit more difficult, but not bad at all. But the colors don't exactly match, but I was able to kind of go through and matched up what did work here. So I got pretty close. I didn't have a yellow ochre, but yellow with a little bit of brown was pretty darn close. So that was nice that he put those in there that you can kind of check. Now what's really nice too is that when he does do a painting, he tells you what paints he is using or what colors he is using, and then he shows how they're mixed to come up with the color that's in the picture. So here he has the crimson and the ultramarine, and he shows kind of where it's mixed to get the color that he's painting with. So that's one of the real strengths of the book, and he usually only uses 3 or maybe 4 colors, some variation of the primary colors and maybe an additional color for most paintings. So I really tried to make an effort to match the colors. It got me a lot of practice in mixing colors. In fact, the colors don't look all too close here with this light. I'm using a different light, so maybe that has something to do with it. But here he's actually going fruit, and he just shows one, simple fruit at a time. And he does that with a number of different fruits, bananas and grapes. And then he kind of pulls it all together to shows you how to do kind of a still life, in this case with fruit. So he does a still life, and so you kind of put it all together. And what's kind of nice is that you get to a second attempt at doing it. And also, if something didn't quite work out and you wanted to do it a little different way, you have another opportunity to give it a try and see how it works out. So, anyway, so that's kind of the format of the book. He does the same thing with vegetables, radishes and onions, and then a still life with the vegetables. So. The flowers were fun. Those were kind of nice. The same thing, does a still life, and he shows you kind of what order he paints everything in, and does a flower still life. So that's that. From there, he kind of goes into things that deal with landscapes. For instance, skies. And I was running into 2 issues. One is that I wasn't being quite as bold with the colors as he was. And that's not because of the paints. That's just because not being confident. You try not to make things too dark to stand out. And the other thing that I was doing is a lot of times in the previous pictures I was using very small brush strokes while he was using large brush strokes. And once again, that kind of has to do with confidence. Here's some more skies. From there, he goes to trees, which are important in landscapes. And some of these exercises are a little bit redundant, but that's just fine, and it gives you a lot of practice on going over things more than once and getting used to everything. Okay, it goes over distance and foregrounds with distant hills. And more of the same. And finally, he goes over a full-blown landscape that you can paint. Now that you know how to paint the tree, you know how to paint the hills and the sky and the foreground. And he comes up with something like this. So the only negative that I saw, or thing that I would change, is he kind of goes over cows and birds here in this painting. And the next chapter is actually animals and birds. So you probably should have reversed these 2 chapters, but not a big deal. But here's the animals and the birds. And more animals and birds and cows. And then from here, he actually goes to more urban elements. Things like people. And he doesn't show you how to paint portraits or anything. They're just how to make a representation of a person there. His 2 things is he doesn't paint faces, or at least he doesn't have you paint faces, and he says leave out the feet. So I'm not exactly sure why he's leaving out the feet, but so actually here he expanded his palette out quite a bit. But once again, he's showing how he's mixing the colors for different stuff. But this is the exception rather than the rule as far as his size of palette. Then as far as urban stuff, he shows you how to do some buildings, and then painting a village. That's kind of the culmination of the urban stuff. Okay, from the urban stuff he goes to water, and that finishes off the book. So he does some things on water and reflections. Some more moving water, stationary water. And he's big into boats. He does a lot of boats. So, got a number of different variations there. He's got kind of one big boat picture. And then he continues with kind of beach sort of things and waves. The waves didn't really come out very good. Well, neither of these kind of came out all that well. But, whatever. And some things that you might see on a coastline. And finally, let's see, he has you do a seascape. And I decided to do that on a bigger piece of paper just for fun. So, here it is. He gives you the steps and ends up with a big seascape to do. And one thing I thought is, most of my colors are kind of mute. And his are too, though. But I didn't really find out until I got to the end of the book that the cover is actually the same picture, and they're much more vivid on the cover. So the printing must be a little bit different here. So I think the colors in the book are a little bit muted, so my paintings have been a little bit muted also. But anyways, it kind of ends abruptly at page 96, and I really got a lot out of doing the exercises, so that was a lot of fun. So some of the shortcomings of the book is that and it's just inherent in using a book, is you're copying what's here, rather than actually looking at a scene and interpreting what you're looking at. So I'm looking forward to actually doing that. I also learned that you really got to use a lot of water, especially when you're doing a lot of liquid paint. When you're doing a wash, you got to keep that puddle of liquid there and moving when you're going down the page. Especially with my paper, because it seemed to not hold out the color quite as well. So anyways, that is that. And I have some actually information on the original owner. Inside the book there was a receipt, and I won't show the name or address, but it was for a Ms. Fox, and I think she may be deceased, but I looked her up on the internet. But who knows if I have the right person or not, so I'm not even going to get into that. It was ordered back in 2001 from this alphacraze.com, so it was probably pretty early in the internet ordering phase. And she paid, well, actually, the book lists for $9.95, and she paid $7.95, so she got a discount. So anyways, that was that. And, also in there was a note card that she painted. It actually has her signature, and it was a note card. She must have taken a blank card that was, folded in half, and she did a watercolor painting on it. So, just out of her honor, I went ahead and it was kind of beat up on the edges, and also had some smudges and other marks, and I was able to trim off the bad parts and keep the signature and whatnot. So we have this posted. I'll probably put it back in the book when I go to get rid of it, and maybe put something that I painted in there too, and pass it along and see how long that gets passed along from person to person. So anyways, I don't think she used the book all too much, because it wasn't well worn. I kind of beat it up after going through the whole thing. And two, her technique is quite a bit different than what's used in the book, but it's really nice. So that's it. I would definitely recommend the book if you're a beginner. I really enjoyed doing it because it was pretty simple and pretty mindless as far as if I wanted to do some painting. I didn't have to think about what I was going to paint. I just turned to the next page, ran through the exercise, and it was really great practice. And it took me a while to get through the book, but I was kind of stubborn, and I thought I've done a lot of this stuff before, and you do a few things and you stop, but I wanted to really give it a good shot, and I did, and I learned a lot. So that was great. I'm definitely not going to be any big painter, that's for sure. But I am looking forward on trying some, subjects of my own and seeing how those come out. So I definitely have a much firmer basis on everything. So anyways, that's it. Thank you for watching the video, and happy watercoloring to you.